the first thing that we have to talk about is the dispersion and the Exodus. And when I say Exodus, I'm not talking about the Exodus from Egypt, but I'm actually talking about the Exodus from Jerusalem.
Okay. So I have some scriptures here that point, because he makes mention about the diaspora from Jerusalem. So we know that you see all these verses here I put in here. We can read a couple. Okay. We can read a couple. One of the verses that I quoted in at our beloved's memorial service was Luke 21:24. But I see that you didn't touch that. So Luke 21, I'll read it again. Luke 21:24. It speaks specifically to Israel being led captive to all nations. Talking about the diaspora, right? So Luke 21:24, it says, "They shall fall by the edge of the sword, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." Okay? So, Jerusalem, it says Jerusalem will be trodden down by the Gentiles. They shall be led captive into all nations, right? So, this was after the Babylonian and Assyrian captivity. So, what is he talking about? Right? This is talking about the Babylon. This is talking about being led captive into all nations, right? Captive. If you look at the Strong's Concordance for the word captive, it's the word akmalatizo, which means to make captive, which is from ahimalatos, which means a prisoner of war. Right? So you kind of mentioned it in your sharing, but the Africans, see, Israel came through Africa. Israel was not African. It came through Africa, right? Fleeing from persecution until they were scattered, until they were captured and led captive, right? Okay? The trans-Saharan slave trade brought Israelites from Babylon into the interior of Africa. Right? And it's true, the Romans did do that. They did bring them into Egypt in ships. But once they got into Egypt in ships, they didn't go back into Europe in ships. They went to Egypt in ships, right? So they were led captive into all nations, right? Okay, we're prisoners of war. That's a history that only one people have. That were prisoners of war, captured, right? And it says, into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles. Okay, Jerusalem, the land of the Jews, as you would like to name it, is trodden down by Gentiles, right? So, as a reference, I mentioned this when I was sharing. Genesis chapter 10, the table of nations. You can read Genesis 10 and 2 through 5. It talks about the sons of Japheth, right? Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. So, who are the Ashkenaz Jews? Sons of Gomer. Who's Gomer? Germany. So the Ashkenaz Jews are Germans. Gomer is Hebrew, is the Hebrew origin of the word of the German people. Okay? They'll tell you that in their own history. All right? Riphath, Togarmah, verse 4. Sons of Yavan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodan. Right? By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided. Okay? Now, I know you might go to a dictionary that might say a Gentile is a non-Jew, but a biblical Gentile, according to what we're reading here in Genesis 10, a biblical Gentile is a descendant of Japheth, and that's the European people, including the Ashkenazi Jews, right? So the Jews on the paternal side are Europeans, but on the maternal side, and they'll tell you that they are Edomites, right? Not all of them, some of them, but not all of them are, but some of them are, right? Why? Because when the Romans established a new kingdom in England, who do you think was the royal house? Descendants of Esau. Queen Charlotte, she was an Edomite. She looked like she was black. If you ever seen pictures of her, a book I recommend you to read is called Nature Knows No Color Line by J.A. Rogers. He has pictures of Queen Charlotte with Negro features, right? Esau looked like Negroes until the time that they started mixing their seed, okay? Now, so Luke 24, 21, 24. Now, Deuteronomy 28, 25. Real quick, I'm going to go through these real fast. All right, Deuteronomy 28, 25. So 28, 25 says, Yah shall cause thee to be smitten before your enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, and thou shalt be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. So Israel didn't leave. They didn't just scatter as you and I was taught. They were removed. Okay? They were removed to all kingdoms, right? So they were removed to all kingdoms of the earth. How were they removed? You named it. In your video, they was removed by being taken in ships to Egypt. The ships didn't stop in Egypt because the sea trade was carried out by Tyrus. Okay, I'll give you another reference. And I want to say Ezekiel is Yahshuwah, Ezekiel 27. It talks about the sea trade. Okay. It says this, Ezekiel 27:13. Yavin, Tubal, and Meshach, they were thy merchants. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass in thy marketplace. Right. So Yavin, Tubal, and Meshach were the sea peoples that did the sea trade. Where did they get the slaves from? It said that they traded the persons of men. Where did they get the slaves from? Israelites. Right? You're familiar with Carthage and Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who was a Phoenician, and they traded up the Mediterranean up into Spain. Right? So these were the people that did the sea trade, right? So ships was not, and this is the thing that some Israelites don't get. Sea trade was not is not a new thing. Sea trade been going on ever since the Mediterranean, right? Tyrus, right? Tyre, Hiram Abiff. They all brought the cedars on the ships to Jerusalem in King Solomon's day, right? So sea trade was not something that was rare. So that's why when the Most High said, "You shall go back to Egypt in ships," they did. They went. They carried them from the land to the coast, where Tel Aviv is, Ashkelon. I've been to Israel. I can tell you, I've seen it. Ashkelon, Ashdod, all up there that's where the sea trade. They carried them to the shores. boarded them on the ships, and took them back to Egypt, just like it says in the works of Josephus. That's what I taught. I did a lesson on that about a year ago. So that's Ezekiel 27:13, where Yavon, Tubal, Meshach, who are the Gentiles, right? The descendants of Japheth in Genesis 10 we just read, right? Okay. Jeremiah. Let's go here real quick. I'm going to go through these fast. Jeremiah 15, right? This is stuff that I've been studying for years. I don't have to write notes on this, but I can pull them out. Jeremiah 15:4, it says, and I will cause them to be removed into all kingdoms of the earth because of Manasseh the son of Hezekiah, king of Yehudah, for that which he did in Jerusalem. See that? So that's what the Most High was talking with regards to the king of Yehudah. Removed to all the kingdoms of the earth, right? Prophecy, Deuteronomy, see, that's the thing most people don't get. Deuteronomy 28 is not a one-shot prophecy. It's a perpetual prophecy, right? Every time Israel disobeyed, they went into a captivity. Now, this captivity is the last one, because this is the one where the Most High said, because we went through all the lands, and he said, in those lands, we're going to wake up and return to the covenant, right? All right, so Jeremiah 24:9. Here's another one. Jeremiah 24:9. It says what? And I will deliver them to be removed to all kingdoms of the earth for their hurt, to be a reproach and a proverb and a taunt and a curse in all places where I shall drive them. So this time he says drive them. And driving them is pushing them off, right? So he carried us out of the land with the oppressors, right? In various forms. So that's Jeremiah 24:9. Jeremiah 29:18 is another one, right? So go to Jeremiah 29:18. And it says, I will persecute them with sword, with the famine, and with pestilence, and will deliver them to be removed to all kingdoms of the earth, to be a curse and an astonishment and a hissing and a reproach among all nations where I have driven them. Right? Now, Deuteronomy 30 talks about, let's pull up real quick. That's what I quote. One of the passages I quoted at the memorial service. Deuteronomy 30. This is a never-ending thing. This thing is not a one-shot deal where you only see it one time. It's all through the prophets. The prophets kept telling Israel, you're going to be scattered to the four corners. You're going to be scattered to every nation on the earth, right? All right, Deuteronomy 30. This is what I read. It shall come to pass when all these things will come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and shall call them to mind among all nations where Yah hath driven thee. Only one people was driven among the nations. That's your Israelite, right? Now let's go to Jeremiah 34:17, right? We can do this all day long. Jeremiah 34:17, right? It says, therefore thus says Yah, you have not hearkened unto me by proclaiming liberty, everyone to his brother, and every man to his neighbor. Behold, I proclaim a liberty for you, says Yah, to the sword, to the pestilence, and to the famine. And I will make you to be removed unto all kingdoms of the earth. There it is again. The prophets are agreeing that the Israelites was removed, not got a visa, not migrated, but were removed. Only one people, and all these prophets agree, was removed. Right? Not scatter or migrate. That's what the Jews did. They scattered and migrated. The true Israelite nation was removed. Okay? Joel chapter 3. I'll go there while I'm thinking about it. Joel chapter 3. It's another one. See, these things is in my psyche. I know these things in my sleep. All right? Joel 3:1. For behold in those days, and in that time when I shall bring in the captivity of Yehuda and Jerusalem. Right? That's the southern kingdom. Right? I will also gather all nations, and I will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will judge or plead. It says plead, but it's actually judge them there for my people, for my heritage, Israel, whom they had scattered among the nations and parted my land. So what do? They have, he says, they have scattered among the nations, right? How did they scatter? By taking Israel as slaves, as prisoners of war. Every nation had their hand in it. It was a divine, if you like, judgment. It wasn't a coincidence, right? The people of Israel was prophesied to be removed. Okay? Verse 3 says, they cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Right? He said, what have you to do with me, O Tyre? Tyre is the one that did the trade. When Israel went back to Egypt in ships, Tyre was the one that grabbed them and put them in his ships and distributed them to other lands. You see? See how that works? And all the coasts of Palestine will you render me a recompense. Now, we just read earlier who settled in Palestine for 400 years. Edomites. So who was the one that was responsible for Israelites going into captivity initially? Edomites, who have taken on the identity of the Israelites and told you just an African American Negro. So the coast of Palestine, will you render me recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return recompense upon your own head? Because you have taken my silver, my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly, pleasant things. You read that today, or in your video. The children of Yehuda and the children of Jerusalem have you sold to the Grecians. We just told you who merged with the Greek society. The Edomites. We read that in Jewish Encyclopedia. You sold them to the Greeks that you might remove them far from their border. Okay? He says, behold, I will raise them out of the place where you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. And he says, because of what you did to my heritage, I'm going to sell your sons and daughters into the hands of the children of Yehuda, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for Yah have spoken it. Okay? So that's Joel chapter 3, right? They all agree, right? Now, while I'm thinking about it, right? This is talking about the ingathering. Okay, now I'm going to hold off on that. But Zechariah, you got to read Zechariah 14, but first you're talking about diaspora, so we're going to deal with the diaspora, right? Okay, now, Isaiah 11 and 12. That's more of the gathering. Okay, so I'll read it. Okay, I'll tell you what I do. I'll read Zechariah 14. I'll read Isaiah 11 and 12, because this is more so talking about the gathering, right? That you mentioned the diaspora in that portion of it, but I'll read it in passing. So Zechariah 14. Okay. It says, behold, the day of Yah comes set, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. This is Zechariah 14 and 1. Now verse 2. I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall Yah go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount Olive shall cleave to the midst thereof towards the east, towards the west, and there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove towards the north, and half towards the south. And you shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach to Azal. Yes, you shall flee like as you fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah the king of Yehudah. And Yah, my Elohim, shall come, and all his saints with thee. Who's that talking about? The second coming. So the second coming is when the saints, who are the Israelites, comes with the Messiah back to Jerusalem to rule the nations with a rod of iron for 1,000 years. Right? Okay? Now, Isaiah 11 and 12. Let's go there. This is another ingathering. Okay? Isaiah 11 and 12. We shared this in our lesson today. And Isaiah 11 and 12. And you shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth. So that's why I said 1948 is not fulfilling a prophecy, because Israel doesn't go back to the homeland until the Messiah comes, the second coming. Right? He said he didn't say they were going to decide we going back home. He didn't even say that the League of Nations had the power to make a declaration to give them rights to move, to go back to a place they've never been. But here all the prophets agree that Israel goes back home with the Messiah. That's why, okay, I'll give you another one. Matter of fact, it's in my rotation. If you go to Revelation 7, and verse 1 through 8, it talks about, after these things I saw four angels standing on four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. Why are the angels on four corners? He's going to tell you in a minute, but I'm going to give you the answer, and we're going to read it. Israel was scattered to the four corners: north, south, east, and west. Right? So the angels is there for a purpose, and watch what he says here. I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living Elohim, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our Elohim in their foreheads. Who are those servants that he's going to seal? We're going to see it. We keep reading, right? And I heard a number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Right? That connects with Deuteronomy 30, right? In the lands of where we're scattered, 144,000, right, of the 12 tribes. Not just the one tribe, Yehudah, who you incorrectly was taught is Jew. Jew is something totally different than the tribe of Judah. Jew is actually a people who've taken on a religious practice by using Talmudic books, whether it be the Babylonian Talmud or the Jerusalem Talmud, to enforce a religion called Judaism. That's what a Jew is, right? And from ethnic perspective, the people that have embraced that are other nations, not the physical descendants of the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob or Jacob. Okay? So he does a roll call. He says the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, and tribe Asher, the tribe Naphtali, Simeon, right? Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, right? He names the 12 tribes, right? And so the 4 angels were sent to the 4 corners because that's where the 12 tribes were scattered, to the 4 corners, right? Now, let's go to Jeremiah 49 and 36, right? 49, 36. Jeremiah 49, 36. And upon Elam will I bring 4 winds. Who's Elam? He's a descendant of Shem, right? Some of them, the descendants of Shem, Elam, he said, I will bring 4 winds from the 4 corners of heaven and will scatter them towards the winds. So some of the people that got scattered are actually Elamites. And there shall no nation, whether the outcasts of Elam, shall not come. So Elamites were scattered to the 4 corners. Okay? But now, the judgment of Elam was not the same as the judgment of Esau. I mean, of Israel. Which was what? The curses. They were scattered, but they didn't get the curses. So Elamites look like Israelites, but they're not. They're cousins. For I will cause Edom to be dismayed before their enemies and before them that seek their life, and I will bring evil upon them, even my fierce anger, says Yah, and I will send the sword after them till I have consumed them. And I will set my throne in Elam, and will destroy from thence the king and the princes, says Yah. But it shall come to pass in the latter days that I will bring again the captivity of Elam, says Yah. So Edom went into captivity, but was restored. Just like Egypt went into captivity, but they were restored. Back to Egypt, and they became a base people, right? The prophet is Ezekiel speaks to that. And Henry Louis Gates went to Nubia. The Nubians are the ancient Egyptians returned back to the land, but are base people under the government of the Indo-Eurasian Arabs, who now rule Egypt after many years of wars. Right? So Yahshuwah 37 and 9. Right? Ezekiel 37 and 9. It says, Then said he to me, Prophesy unto the wind, prophesy, son of man, say to the wind, Thus saith Yah Elohim, Come from the 4 winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army. Okay? Now, if you continue reading in that 37th chapter, it says that the dry bones is the whole house of Israel, not just the southern kingdom, Yehuda, but all Israel, right? If you go all the way down, I think it's the no, it's not. No, it's not all the way down, but the whole house of Israel. Okay, but it's in that chapter. If you read chapter 37, it's in there. I'm not gonna find because I'm trying to expedite. I've gone 50 minutes already in this. I didn't realize time was getting ahead of me. Okay, let me continue. So that's Ezekiel 49, Yahshuwah 37 and 9. Now I quote Matthew 24:31, right? So Matthew 24:31, it says, And he shall send his angel with the great sound of the trumpet, And they shall gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Four winds, right? Israel scattered to the four corners, four winds, four angels gather them from the elect with the seal. Gather them from the four corners with the seal in their forehead, right? That's Matthew 24:31. Mark 13 says the same thing in a somewhat different way. 13:27 says, and then shall he send his angels, and shall gather his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost parts of the earth to the uttermost parts of heaven. So he shall send his angels and shall gather his elect. Okay, Deuteronomy 32. All right, Deuteronomy 32. And 19. And when Yah saw it, it abhorred him because of the provoking of the sons and his daughters. He said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be, for they are very forward generation, children in whom is no faith. They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not Elohim. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. So who are the people he moved us to jealousy with? The Jews, the Edomites, and the Ashkenaz, who are not the people. He said, I will provoke them with the people who are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with those which are not a people. Right? They're not my people. Right? I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. For a fire is kindled in my anger, and shall burn into the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains. And I will heap mischiefs upon them. I will spend my arrows upon them. They shall be burnt with hunger, and devoured, and burning with heat, and with bitter destruction. I will also send teeth of the beast upon them, with poison of serpents, of dust. The sword without and terror within shall destroy both young man and virgin, and suckling, also the man of gray hairs. Gray hairs, right? I said I would scatter them into the corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. That's why you don't know you an Israelite, because the remembrance has been taken from us. But somebody heard the words. I was one that it was personally revealed to me. I wasn't taught this. My coattail was pulled. I was headed to a church concert to play with Timothy Wright, when a voice out of nowhere spoke to me and told me I was an Israelite, and took me to Daniel 9, said, study the people Israel, Jerusalem, Israel, the people of Israel rather, which includes Judah, Yehuda, and the city Jerusalem. It freaked me out. I'm like, what? But the Most High knew he could count on me to open my big mouth. And I haven't shut up since, right? I said, I will scatter them to the corners. I will make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, lest their adversaries should behave themselves strangely, and lest they should say, our hand is high, and Yah have not done all this. See, that's what we say. So, we're led to believe that the transatlantic slave trade was just a coincidence, just a freak of nature. It's something that just happened. Rather than believing that it's all prophetic. And returning to our land with the king is prophetic. We've been trying to get our 40 acres and a mule. We done gave up now. I'll be just satisfied with a meal now. Never must scratch the 40 acres. Just give me a mule. I'll be satisfied with a mule, right? Every other nation got reparations. But you ain't get nothing. Right? That's why he said, the verse in Deuteronomy 28:60 said, no man shall buy you. That's not a contradiction. You shall be sold as male and female slaves, and no man shall buy you. That's a contradiction if you're going to be sold, but nobody's going to buy you. That's what Christian apologists want to try to make us believe, that pastor said nobody's going to buy you. It's a contradiction, and the Most High don't contradict itself. If he said you're going to be sold, then you sold, right? That's what happened. Put our ancestors on the auction block. Got a little black girl over here. She's 17 years old. She's fruitful, and she could give you some sons and some daughters and strong men that can work in the field. Can I get $100? $50, $60, sold. $200. That's not a coincidence. That's a prophecy. He said, you shall be sold. Right? All right, let's continue.